Hello, everyone. My name is Tooways Asmal. Welcome to a bonus episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than climbing a corporate ladder. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on a podcast by tomorrow morning. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. If you're joining us live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is Jane Hales, managing partner and co-founder of Sapio Research, and also entrepreneurs organization Accelerator Chair based in London. Jane, thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really excited and delighted to be here. Thank you.
So let's jump into some questions. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And even outside of work, who is Jane Hales?
Okay, interesting one. So it starts a good couple of decades back. I was born in Wales, which is a small town about 250 miles away from London. So only one secondary school, relatively insignificant kind of place. I was the first of my family, fortunately, to go to university, and that was all the big wide world. And then when I left that, I ended up in market research by accident, which is often the case. Nobody chooses market research because that's kind of like asking questions for a living, and who puts that on a job description? But I'm now fortunate that my daughters are also in university at the moment, so it's kind of a nice full circle and so forth, and great. Yeah, but market research is my job, and I have been an employer for less time than I have been an employee. So I spent 20 or so years working agency side, being part of a company, having a start at growing a business, but with somebody else's money. And then 5 years or so ago, bootstrapping my own business along with two other business partners as well. So this is where I am now. And outside of work, run around after dogs, building projects and things like that. Don't tend to sit still that much.
Okay, that's good. That's a good summary. And you mentioned it now. You've been a founder of a few businesses. What advice do you have for someone who's sitting in a corporate job or an employee somewhere else, and they're thinking of making the leap to entrepreneurship, but they're scared of stepping into the unknown? Do you have any tips for them?
No, that's a good one. I mean, the term entrepreneurship, I must admit, I felt a couple of years, it took me to be comfortable with the term. So been running a business for 5 years, but maybe only in the last 3 or so years. And that was partly when I found a group of people that were like-minded in terms of owning their own businesses. So surrounding myself with people that were trying to do the same, that were sitting lonely on the top, didn't necessarily know a life mapped out in front of them compared to being an employee, perhaps. Whether to do it or not, very, very good questions. I mean, I came to the stage where it wasn't a deliberate choice, but it was through a merger that didn't quite work. And I was faced with either more of the same and not being in control of my destiny, or having a go and doing it myself. And actually, that was the best thing I could have done. So sometimes being pushed, jumping without that safety net is worth doing. You don't necessarily have to be the best at what you do, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a brand new original idea. But if you do it a little bit quicker or a little bit smoother or with a little bit more passion than those are doing it out there, it's worth a go, and you can be very successful doing that. But yeah, it doesn't have to be an absolutely brand new idea.
And I mean, did you do anything in terms of, is this anything worth considering in terms of savings or anything like that? Or what did you do?
Very good question, because it's a bootstrap business. We didn't have any funding, but fortunately the business I'm in, market research, you don't need much more investment other than a laptop and contacts and so forth. There isn't lots of capital equipment. So that investment wasn't an issue. I probably was fortunate in the position whereby, being part of a partnership, married, my husband had a steady wage. And so the fact that I could play and potentially not have money coming through the door in a couple of months' time, that was a great reassurance for me. So, but it's still having that backing of a partner that's willing to sort of let you jump and take that risk. But it's amazing what you can live off if you have to do it sometimes, that you can sort of cut your cloth. What is more important, having those things, having those holidays, or having the new experiences and growing emotionally and physically in different ways, perhaps?
No, I mean that gives us a good understanding. And so, am I correct that like, your company does market research for marketing companies and agencies? That seems very niche. Like you went for a specific type of client. Why the decision to go so specific instead of going broad?
That's a good question. Yeah, so about 70% or so of our clients are in the marketing PR space. Um, Partly, I think, because over the years we've developed quite a quick process of being able to work with people who need flexibility, who need decisions quickly, they need to get onto the field. Whereas perhaps in the more traditional word of market research, which is strategic research, deep thinking, planning for a long time, it takes different team members to execute those kind of things, the sort of the quick projects versus the slow projects. And over the years, I think working in an agency for 25 years or so, being used to being driven by another project, and then you sort of work out what works. They're great people to work with. I mean, to have the creativity, to have the new ideas, to have a range of different projects. I mean, last year we worked on 250 different projects last year. They weren't 250 different clients, but 250 different projects. It just sort of keeps the mind active. It keeps the different topics, although you end up sort of specialising maybe in tech, security, building, things like that. It's a new topic within it each time, and that's great. Whereas perhaps the longer studies that last a lot longer, you have less of a variety in terms of topics and in terms of clients and so forth. But niching down was a choice. I mean, we could have stayed broad, but you can't boil the ocean. You need to kind of focus and maybe dig deep and go into things in a little bit more depth and develop your skills and keep practice them. And I would say that kind of lots of things going through develops repetition and practice, and you kind of get to know what works and what doesn't work. Yeah.
Okay. And are your clients mainly in England, or do you help companies across the globe?
Across the globe, I have to confess English is the only language I speak, so being able to speak to clients in another language can be more difficult. Probably about 45% of our survey work is international, is outside the UK, but at least 10% of our clients are based in the US, so we receive the briefs and the instructions from the US and then execute it out of the UK, covering a range of countries that they want to do. But it's a matter of translating, particularly if you're doing quant, if you're doing a survey which is scaling things 1 to 5 or tick boxes, multiple choice, that kind of thing, you can translate that script into a range of languages. We did a project last year where I think we did 21,000 online interviews for a client, and that was across about 18 different countries. But they happen to be based in the UK, whereas we can do just the same for a client in America, for example. So it's great. And
And do you find yourself having to adjust the way you manage clients depending on where they're from, or is it really horses for courses?
Good question. To a certain extent, if the principles are dealing with people with respect and friendliness and managing time and being proactive in your communications, that is something that's appreciated in any culture, I think, isn't it? And so we don't change ourselves necessarily. It seems to work well. But you do sometimes notice dealing with different countries, different cultures, that there might be a different approval process. The length of time on their side might be a little bit longer, perhaps. Or the level of detail you might have to go into in some countries might be different, but the principles are pretty much the same. No, we don't tend to change that much. No.
For the audience, we'll be responding to questions towards the end, so please add your questions now to the comment section so that we don't miss them. Let's move a little bit to EO, Entrepreneurs Organization.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how it works in London or in the United Kingdom, but in South Africa, if you work in a corporate, you don't really hear about EO. I mean, the first time I heard about Entrepreneurs Organization was when I moved into a smaller business that helps startups and scale-ups. Otherwise, it didn't really exist in my mind. And most of the audience is in corporate. So can you tell us a little bit about Entrepreneurs Organization?
Yes, yeah. And I'm with you. I mean, I was in corporate for many years. I hadn't heard of them either. running a business for a couple of years, and it was a friend of a friend that invited me to what I thought was going to be a ladies' networking event, which I felt safe with, and we rocked up and listened to what almost seemed like a bit of a cult, I suppose, in terms of the whole, we are here for each other, there's a peer support network, confidentiality, what goes on in the room stays in the room, but we share our stories, we help each other. That's kind of why it felt a little bit cultish, and what you get, you receive, so you need to dedicate the time and so forth. But yeah, it's a group of people that have potentially been through the same aspects with business, or even their life perhaps, as you, and they're able to share their experiences. So you were to go to the forum or a group each month and talk about the particular problem or pain point or idea you want to explore, and you have a group of individuals who are qualified in different areas but have all met the same criteria and have the same values, sharing their experience in increasing sales in that market, or dealing with a problem employee, or exiting a business, for example. So it takes a while to maybe get your head around it, but it's probably the best kept secret there is, almost, because it's a non-solicitation environment. I mean, you can do business with each other, but that's not the point. Whereas networking events are set up in quite a different way, but this is still an excellent way of meeting new people, getting new ideas and getting new support. And you can kind of rock up most places in the world to know that you're going to be on the same sort of wavelength generally as people in that organisation. There's a lot of shared learning, a lot of shared experiences and events and so forth.
So if you've started your own organisation, I definitely recommend having a look at any EO or entrepreneurs organisation. It definitely helps, and I've seen the impact.
Yeah, and I would suggest in the two areas as well. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with the accelerators and then the full forum. No, this is brilliant. So this is where I started, actually. So businesses between $250,000 and $1 million. There is a program over 2 years to help you get to that stage, to help you with your growth journey. And again, it's through a series of accountability sessions once a month, where you have a trained coach who is a business owner. And again, you present what your issue is that you might want to discuss that month, and you're kept accountable in terms of how your revenue is changing and playing with your business models and so forth. And you attend 4 learning days during the year as well. So people, strategy, cash, and execution. And you can start at any of those times. And you're given a canvas, you're given tools. And then the idea is you go away and apply those tools in your business, tell it to your colleagues, put those systems in place, and you grow. But also full EO members are equally as welcome to attend those events. And I know in London last week, we had the Scale Up looking at strategy, and there were as many, if not more, full EO members attended that learning session as there was accelerators. It's great value for both. It's lots of new tools and a great way of talking specifically about how you get further. Yeah, but it's
amazing.
Yeah.
And so I see you've been the chair of the EO chapter. So 2 questions. So I wasn't sure, is that for the country, for the city, and how has being the chair affected you?
Good questions. In the UK, we just have one chapter at the moment, so it's called EO London. So it is the country stroke city, I suppose. I'm not the actual chair of the whole of the organisation. I'm not the president of the London. I'm just one of the board members. But the area that I'm the chair for, or I look after, is the Accelerator group. So my job there is to sort of liaise with, work with the coaches, so the business owners that are helping with the accountability, talk to people that are interested in joining to answer their questions, to sort of make sure that the kind of people that would fit in with people we have already, and network with the European lot. I was on a call last week with the European chairs. How it fits into my business, it does take extra time. I do have to take time away from the business, but I would say it has helped in terms of working with other leaders, working on a board, being on somebody else's board. You learn new leadership skills. You're able to then take those back to your business, as well as other experience shares that people might have. So we were talking about the sales funnel and how to get new accelerators on board to EOA this week. I was learning some great things in terms of how people are executing campaigns and so forth. I can take that back to my business, so I can apply it to what we're going to be doing on our own outreach for new clients. So for me, very much the two run in tandem. I spend time in both, but it's great to have it and a social aspect as well, in terms of the evenings perhaps, or some of the Christmas party do's that are coming up. Connection, are we okay for the connection? Hello everybody. I bet this is getting a little bit boring, just me on my own. And if anybody wants to know, that's a picture of Peter Postlethwaite behind me. He is an English actor in Brassdorf here, brilliant. I would love to ask you guys questions, but I can't see or hear you.
My apologies. We've been experiencing some technical issues in Cape Town with Wi-Fi. So apologies.
Do you know what? I thought it was me, because this happens a lot in our office. Don't worry.
This is the first time, or the second time it's happened to me, so it always catches me by surprise. Apologies for the.
That's all right. I thought I was boring you. I thought, oh my goodness,
No,
rather than saying
no,
goodbye.
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. You were telling us about how it takes the chair, being the chair of the organization takes some of your time, but you were talking to us a little bit about how else it affects you.
Yeah. The fact that I'm part of the board and I am learning to lead along with them, to fit in with people that are very experienced, learn from them about ways that they run their business and how they might run campaigns and so forth, is excellent, because I can also take that back to my organisation. I can take that back to my team. So yes, I spend time out of my business working with EO, but I would say that brings the benefits with it, in the fact that it's a learning platform. It's a great way of seeing what other businesses do, even though they're not in the same field as me, but it's still working with other very talented individuals. It's brilliant.
What is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
My younger self. I spent a long time working for the same company or with the same people for quite some time. I probably didn't have enough confidence to give something else a go, to go somewhere else. I was comfortable and I liked the people, but I probably would have said, if you get to a stage where you're not necessarily learning or growing as an individual, don't stay there just because you feel as though you ought to, or because you'd be letting people down. So give it a go. And I know that's a kind of a crazy thing to say as an employer, because I don't want my staff leaving left, right and centre. I want them to stay. They're all fantastic. But I think one of the best ways of getting experience is by maybe changing up and trying a couple of other things, if not as a minimum, at least speaking to an awful lot of different people in different walks of life, in different businesses, in different areas, and learning from them, rather than just assuming you kind of know what's going on. Yeah.
I wanted to check there aren't any questions coming through. So any last few words from you, or anything that we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
Not specifically necessarily, but one of the projects I think I was most interested in and proud of that we've done this year, and I don't know whether it's worth people, if your team are in IT security, for example, but there was a Respect and Security project that we did recently. The idea of raising awareness of harassment within staff working in the IT industry. And that proved to be a really interesting project, but also the impact it had in terms of getting organisations to sign up to a pledge in terms of how they would work with their staff and how they would work with the wider society about reducing harassment and increasing diversity. They wanted 50 people, 50 companies, individuals, corporates to sign up to it within a couple of weeks. And within 2 months, they were up to 100. So that was a great bit of pro bono work that we did. Not only did we get to learn more about that industry, but also the impact that it had on that organisation was fantastic. And that's an area close to my heart with my daughter doing computer science. So yeah, kind of, they're protecting us in terms of computer security, cyber security. So it'd be nice to protect them as well. Keep it away.
100%. No, that's a great way to end. A reminder to the audience, the show has been live on YouTube and will be on the podcast tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast and you feel that it's added value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell so that you get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Jane, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. And Merry Christmas to you all.
Likewise. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat. Goodbye.